We're beginning a new unit at this point, the unit being cells and cell processes. This is kind of a big deal in that up to this point in the semester, we've danced around the idea of biology. We've talked about related subjects to biology, but until you start to talk about cells, you're really not firmly into a biology course. Little historical framework here before we really get started talking about cells. Things date back here to 1665 with a man named Robert Hooke, who we bring up his name because he was the person who named the cell the cell. Apparently he was using a fairly rudimentary microscope back in 1665, and he was looking at cork, and he noticed the repeating pattern, the repeating structures that composed the cork, and for whatever reason they reminded him of the rooms in a monastery where monks lived, which of course are named cells, so thus the name. We get about 150 years that go by to our next significant year, 1838, when we have a scientist by the name of Schleiden. I'm not sure what took so long from 1665 to 1838 because, of course, Hooke was looking at cork, which is a plant. And in 1838, Schleiden too was looking at plants, and he came up with the genius idea that, hey, guess what? All plants and all plant parts are made of cells. Doesn't matter if you're looking at the leaves, the roots, the stems, they're all made out of cells. Notice, conversely then, it did not take very long for the next significant event. Another German scientist by the name of Schwann, in 1839, just a year later, said, oh, hey, this guy Schleiden is getting all kinds of publicity down the street because he said plants were made out of cells. I wonder what I could say. Well, animals and animal parts are made out of cells. So a very logical transition from one idea to the next. Then a few years later, in 1855, a scientist by the name of Virchow said that all cells come from other cells. So they don't just poof out of nowhere. All cells come from other cells. And basically, based on the work of those four individuals, that leads us to something that still exists today, known as the cell theory. Three parts, as you can see, to the cell theory. Number one, basically, if we take Schleiden and Schwann, we've got number one, all living things are composed of cells. That was something that we talked about back in our characteristics of life information. I want to focus a bit more on statement number two here of the cell theory. Cells are the basic unit of both structure and function in all living things. Now, if you take that first part, to me it does seem like it's just restating what was already stated in number one. We said all living things are composed of cells, and then we're saying again, cells are the basic unit of structure. Living things are built from, their structure is composed of cells. Okay, so nothing real new there. The real important part to me is the second half of this statement, the function. Cells are the basic unit of function in all living things. When we think about how, for instance, our own body works, we do tend to think of, the heart beating and the stomach digesting food and the brain sort of running the whole show. We tend to think about things on the level of organs and perhaps organ systems, digestive system, nervous system, muscular system, etc. When it comes down to it, though, your body functions because each one of your cells functions. Those systems that I just mentioned are made of organs. Those organs are made out of tissues, but those tissues are made out of cells, and the cells are the basic unit of life. Every cell in your body has a job, and it better do it. It better do it over and over again. It better do it day in and day out. You are alive because each cell in your body has a responsibility and it fulfills it. So therefore, cells are the basic unit of function in all living things. It's not good enough just to say that you're made out of them. Your body works because of them. That moves us on to statement number three here, which again is just kind of a copy of Virchow from the previous slide, where we say all cells come from other cells, or in this statement here, all cells come from pre-existing cells. What that leads us to is the fact that if you take literally every cell on Earth, we can divvy that down into two main categories of cells. Every cell on Earth is either a prokaryotic cell or it is a eukaryotic cell. The key difference, and there are several differences as you can see that are listed here, but the key difference is that prokaryotic cells don't have a nucleus. If you got a cell and it doesn't have a nucleus, it's a prokaryotic cell. If you have a cell and it has a nucleus, it is a eukaryotic cell. Now, in addition to that major difference between the two, prokaryotic cells are definitely smaller, significantly smaller, and I'll try to show you that in a minute. And prokaryotic cells are definitely less complex. There are fewer cell parts that perform specialized functions in the prokaryotic cells, and many more of those parts that do perform specialized functions in eukaryotic cells. Basically, the difference here is prokaryotic cells are bacteria, eukaryotic cells are everything else. So you, me, plants, they're all made out of eukaryotic cells, even funguses, so anything that has a nucleus. To give you some sense here, you have a prokaryotic cell pictured on the left, you have a eukaryotic cell pictured on the right. Notice over here on the left, there is no nucleus. There is this weird thing that's labeled nucleoid, but really that's nothing more than a space. It's not really a thing. Over here in the eukaryotic cell, you've got a nucleus. Notice the parts. Look at all these parts here that are listed in the eukaryotic cell. Those are all specialized parts that perform specific functions for the eukaryotic cell. Over here, yes, I realize there are some things that are labeled, but much of what you see over here is actually options. For instance, do prokaryotic cells all have a flagella? No. Do they all have pili? No. Do they all have a capsule? No, they do not. And so really much of what you see here isn't in every prokaryotic cell. Every prokaryotic cell is going to have some DNA. It's going to have some ribosomes. It's going to have a cell membrane and a cell wall. You're going to have some fluid in here. But really, that's pretty much it. It is not a complex situation. And keep in mind that just because they're not complex doesn't mean unsuccessful. There's lots and lots and lots of bacteria in the world. They are successful, but they just are able to live in a very simplistic sort of way. Over here, much more complex with all those cell parts, which largely are referred to as organelles, or mini organs. Let's get back to the idea of size for a second. I said that prokaryotic cells were much smaller than eukaryotic cells, and yet as you look at the picture here, it doesn't necessarily appear that way. That's simply because I made this picture the size that it is just so that you can see it. The reality is, if you look over here at the eukaryotic cell, and you look at this one little part here that's labeled as the mitochondrion, that's about the size of a prokaryotic cell in relation to this eukaryotic cell. So prokaryotic are much smaller. So just recap there, every cell on Earth is going to fall into one of either two categories, prokaryotic or eukaryotic. And please know the difference between them.